Welcome to Common Sense. Common Sense is a series of shows featuring interviews with interesting people so that we can, in a clear, concise, and direct way, get to know who they are, what they do, and what's making sense to them and what doesn't. I'm Rudy Breglia, and today I'll be interviewing Jean Anderson, former mayor of Vermilion, and current candidate for Republican State Central Committee in the Senate District 13. Welcome, Jane, and thanks for coming. Why don't you start us off, Jane, and Jean, and tell us where you were born and where you've lived, and just give us a little bit of background.
Okay, Rudy, thank you for this opportunity.
Okay.
And it's nice to have a friendly face.
Okay.
And you're going to take me back a few years. So I was born and raised in Duluth, Minnesota.
Wow. Okay.
It's a ways away.
Yes.
And came to Ohio after my husband completed graduate school in Buffalo, New York.
Okay.
And got his first job teaching at Lorain County Community College.
Wow.
In medical laboratory technology.
Okay.
And that was in 1976, and I've been here ever since.
Okay.
I had a great childhood.
Okay.
Great school experiences. Liked school, loved school, did a lot there. And during my senior year, I was a foreign exchange student to the Philippines.
Wow.
So I'd say that was my exciting experience.
Wow.
And I learned a lot. And I think that's where I really fell in love with America.
Okay.
And I knew that we had the best country on earth.
Sure.
And I wanted to help make sure it stayed that way.
Okay. Well, that's great. What an experience in the Philippines. Tell us about your challenging position of mayor. I always thought that mayors were pretty close to the top of the list for government officials.
Well, it wasn't anything I really planned on.
Okay.
And it wasn't easy.
Understand.
Because we moved from Elyria to Vermilion. I'd only been there about 5 years. Got involved in a local neighborhood stormwater project that was going sour.
Okay.
So several of us in the community got together and decided that we needed to do something about it.
Okay.
So we did, and we formed a grassroots Vermilion organization and invited people to meetings and tried to get to understand our city budget and the priorities and things of that nature. And as we got into that, we discovered that things weren't run so well.
Okay.
And so then we took a bigger interest in our city government and, of course, tried to find someone to run for city council positions and the mayor's position. And a friend of mine ran for our city council position.
Okay.
And I came home the last night in December and said to my husband, well, I can't find anybody to run for mayor. I think I'm going to have to.
Okay.
And he said, that's what you were born to do.
There you go.
So we got involved and did our best. And I had a great, great grassroots campaign. And we defeated the incumbent mayor, which was a total surprise to many in the city.
Okay.
And now I can say that I was an early Trump because he was an outsider, I was an outsider, and some of the insiders didn't care for the fact that I was in the office and not one of their pals. So it was tough going in a lot of ways, but we persevered and we did it.
Okay, well, I love Vermilion, and so
I do too.
yeah, I can see that. Could you describe a mayor as a CEO of a large corporation where some key personnel are going in different directions? From what you just said, I think that fits.
Yes, it really is. You really are the CEO of a large corporation. But you know, these small cities aren't that large. I think my husband's budget at LCC was more than our general fund budget in Vermilion. But at any rate, people regard their city mayor as somebody special, and they think they can come into your office and get you to do special things for them. And I like to follow the policies and the procedures, and I tried not to show any favoritism or special things for folks. But at any rate, yes, it is, you are the CEO of a large corporation, and I think in the beginning, I had people coming in every day, and especially to council meetings. If anybody looked them up online, they would see that people came in trying to find some way to charge me with something malfeasance or misfeasance to get me out of the spot I was in. But after a while, that settled down, and we did okay. We got a lot done, I know that.
Can you mention a couple of big issues and how you handle that?
Well, the big issues for the city of Vermilion at the time was infrastructure.
Okay.
And I want to say outdoors and inside the building. We didn't have computers that communicated with one another in our offices. We had an old financial software system that couldn't even be maintained anymore. So the state was after us to get things changed and current. So we had to change all of our internal infrastructure, and then we had roads and water and sanitary sewers to deal with.
Wow.
And that was a big deal. EPA was, threatening fines, and so we managed to work with them and show that we were making progress and doing what we should be doing. So we ended up with a good relationship with them. We saved a lot of money. I put $1 million down on roads cash.
Wow.
Before I left office. And we brought in a Durapatcher, which was a hot item. Some people were for it and some people were opposed. But after a while, I think they learned it patched up roads that were maybe not so drivable. And we had a good road plan, and we followed through on it and started to work on our stormwater issues.
Okay, well, sounds great. What's the best preparation for holding public office, do you think?
If you want to be fair and square, I think you have to, first of all, know who you are, what you stand for, and what policies you believe in. Now, I'm conservative, and I knew who I was, and I knew what I stood for.
Okay.
That's very important, because if you don't, people can come in and try to persuade you to be something else other than what you are and what you said you were. So I think that's key.
Okay.
You have got to know who you are and be true to that person. And hopefully that person is the same person you took to the campaign. And then you have to know what your residents want. You have to know yourself, and you have to know your residents.
And listen to them.
Oh, yes, of course. That's key. I oftentimes laugh at all the politicians that bloviate and spend more time talking than they do listening. And key is to spend a lot of time listening. I walked and went door to door twice, because we had a primary and a general, and listened to people. That was key.
Yep.
And then I had little town meetings, and people came and I listened to them. In fact, people used to kind of criticize me because, why do you keep doing that? And I would say, I want to know what they're thinking.
Yeah.
I want to hear from them.
And that's the only way. Yeah.
Yeah, that's who I'm serving. So I was a big listener.
And this kind of goes along with that. What characteristics should voters be looking for in a candidate?
Well,
Listening for one. Yeah.
as for me, I look for somebody that can communicate.
Okay.
You know, I don't like somebody dodging questions. And,
Okay.
you know, when you ask them something, they take you someplace else.
Yeah.
I like somebody that can answer a question fair and square. And so I think communication is huge. They have to feel listened to, like we talked about. I think it's
Okay.
important that they feel important because that's who you're serving. And then I think you have to have somewhat of a sense of humor. And
Agree.
I think for me, my faith was very important too, because, you know, it was nice to have some place to go when I needed to go someplace.
Right. Understand. What is the Republican State Central Committee, and what are its major responsibilities?
Good question, because I think in general, most people don't know what the State Central Committee's function is or that it even exists. So that was one of my goals in getting into this campaign.
Okay.
Was to be able to share information about how our state government works. And one of those dimensions is the State Central Committee, and to inform people about what that is and why it's so important. So it's important because it runs our state Republican committee.
Okay.
And it is the board of directors for the State of Ohio Republican Committee.
Okay.
And it's important that we know about it and we elect people to those positions that are going to reflect what the people want reflected. So it is very important. I think a lot of people get to it on the ballot. It shows up in primary ballots generally because it's only a contestant between Republicans, because we
Okay.
choose the Republicans that serve on that committee.
Okay.
And so people don't really pay that much attention to it. And I think a lot of people, when they get to it, they either skip it or kind of say, eeny, meeny. You
Yeah.
know, they just kind
Yes.
of pick a name and go with that. And it's much more important than that.
Understand. How did you reach the decision to run for the Central Committee, and what criteria did you consider?
Well, it wasn't anything I was looking towards. I pretty much figured I had served in elective office as much as I was going to. I had done other things, and I planned to do other things, and I like to help candidates. But I got a call. My husband and I were away for a good part of the winter, and I got a call asking if I would consider running for the State Central Republican Committee on behalf of the Promise Keepers.
Okay.
Now, who called me and knew my slant and knew where I stood on things and knew that I had some political background. And so I could jump in on short notice. So I thought, well, I'm going to have to think about it just a little bit. And I got online and researched the Promise Keepers and found out what they were all about and what that meant. And after I realized that the reforms they were looking for in the State Republican Central Committee, they were common sense.
Yeah. I like that common sense.
Yes, I thought you might, and fits right in here.
Yeah.
And I believed wholeheartedly in all 14 points. So I thought I can sign a pledge to support these reforms in full good conscience. I would go out and campaign for them. So I did sign the pledge. I agreed to run. And but before I did, I called my opponent and asked her how she felt about the Promise Keepers pledge. And she was not going to be able to sign it because she just agreed with most of the points, but she didn't want to make promises that she didn't think she could keep, for example. And she also thought that when you sign a pledge like that, it puts you in a category already. So you might get ostracized from some committees, and you might not get listened to as much as if you're just a neutral person.
Okay.
So she said no, and I said, well, don't take it personally, please, because she's a nice person.
Yeah.
And but I think we really need these reforms, and so I'm going to run. So I decided to run, and I didn't get home until the 1st of April. I was planning on a primary in May that got postponed till August 2nd, which was a good thing for me because it gave me time to get out and meet people and listen to people and talk to people and promote the Promise Keepers reforms.
And come on my show.
And come on your show.
There
Yes,
you go.
thank you.
All right. Well, what are your qualifications that you consider for running for the Central Committee?
Well, in the first place, I'm a regular person.
Okay.
I'm a person of faith. I'm a wife. I'm a mother. And then I worked as a financial manager for a company in Elyria for several years.
Okay.
Prior to becoming mayor. Took care of my mother at home for many years, and after that then got involved in the politics in the city of Vermilion.
Okay.
And also worked on a board for a local community center. We were trying to rehab that community center, and it's beautiful, Vermilion on the Lake Historic Community Center. And so that was very successful. Ran a very successful campaign for mayor. And I was told by people that were familiar with politics that since that was the first office I had ever run for, I would have a steep learning curve. And I did.
Okay. Yeah.
I learned a lot there.
Okay.
And but I think in order to be successful, you have to like people. You have to feel their needs and what they need in their lives, and you have to listen to them. Now, I remember one of the items that was brought before council, and this was in 2006 to 2009, so it was our housing crash. We were preparing our cities for the H1N1 pandemic.
Yeah.
And, it wasn't a real pretty time. And when council wanted to unforgive some of the forgiveness tax that goes along with your automobile tax, I said, you must be nuts. This is not a time to raise taxes on people.
Right.
And be assured I will veto it.
Okay.
So in those ways, and I said, and besides that, we haven't even trimmed our budget to the fullest extent possible. So let's take care of our house, and then we'll ask the voters for more. Because, you don't ask people that are hurting for more.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid that's what's happening in some of our cities currently. But at any rate, you've got to feel where people live. I think that's key.
Okay. What do you expect your major activities to be on the Central Committee?
Well, of course, first of all, will be to support the Promise Keepers 14 reforms. As soon as we can get those passed and in effect, will be wonderful, as far as I'm concerned. We need them.
Okay.
So that will be my first item of business. And then secondly, I feel a real need to take the message of the Central Committee to the people.
Okay.
that we represent in the 13th Senate District. I think it would be great to establish communication between me and them.
Okay.
And we have a perfect way of doing that through our central committees and our executive committees in all of the counties. So I would hope to attend their meetings, share with them what's going on at the central committee, what's going on in their counties and their neighborhoods. And then I'd like to drill down even further and get into some of the precincts and, really communicate good government with we the people.
Okay. What subcommittees would you like to serve on, and how is that decided, what subcommittees you're on?
That I'm not exactly sure of.
Okay.
I know, my experiences in finance and also I would say communications
Okay.
and maybe policy making. But I think those are appointments made by the chairman. And of course, if we enact the reforms from the Promise Keepers, how we select our chairman will be different also. But, that's why people don't like to frustrate the leadership, because they like committee appointments and they like to be recognized. And if you maybe have your own opinions, or you don't rubber stamp, you might not get a committee appointments or things of that nature. But I think I would be good on a finance committee, policy committee, communications. How you get selected remains to be seen.
Do you think that being a non-politician, if I can categorize you that way, gives you an advantage in the election?
Well, one thing that does give you an advantage, and anybody who runs for office will tell you that name recognition
Okay.
helps. So that aside, I'm kind of a quasi-politician. I'm an activist politician. And I like to stay close to the people I represent. So maybe that makes me a non-politician.
Okay.
And I think right now, people are looking for elected officials that are not going to just rubber stamp administration's wishes.
Okay.
People want to elect representatives that care about what they think.
Understand. Tell us about, and you mentioned this already, about the Ohio Promise Keepers who want to reform the Ohio Republican Party.
Yes, this is a group of people that have come together and decided that it's time for some reform. And they have listed their 14 items for reform. It's on their website, and I think probably we'll take some time and be able to go over them in a little bit.
Okay.
But at any rate, we want to elect Republicans to office, no doubt. That is a primary goal. But we
Okay.
also want to elect Republicans that are effective in enacting conservative policies. And I think we've fallen a little short in that area. So the reforms are necessary because the reforms help prevent rubber stamping and get the people more involved with their government. For example, we'd like to have a state convention. We haven't had one since the 80s. And it's important because state conventions draw the people into their platform. And we need a platform. We need a platform that was enacted by we the people, and then we hold our elected representatives to that platform. and we can judge them on how well they have performed and how well they have protected that platform. But right now, I think people feel as though they really don't have a voice because the policies are decided in the Central Committee, and it's very private.
Okay.
So I think, these reforms will bring our decision-making more into the grassroots, and it should energize a Republican base like we haven't seen in a long time.
Now, you've talked about it a little bit. Could you talk a little bit more about the pledge, the Promise Keepers pledge with the 14 points?
Yes, yes. Well, first of all, I would like to say that we have been successful in electing Republicans, no doubt. Our executive office is Republican, our Senate and our legislature are all Republican. But we don't really have the conservative policies that most of us would like to see in place. So it's important to do both. Now, just for an example, a few of the statistics that Ohio had 24 congressional seats in 1970, and we now have 15.
Okay.
So we are losing status on the federal level. Our youth are leaving Ohio at record pace because there's not really a future here for them. They're going to states where they're recognizing a future. Ohio leads the nation in child sex trafficking and is now second in overall human trafficking. That's not a good area to be number one and two
Right,
in.
right.
And it's up from being fourth just 2 years ago. So those aren't statistics that we hear often and we don't like to focus on, but they definitely are problems that we need to address, and address with more than words. We need to address with some real solid action. Our women and children are being sold into modern day slavery. That's the human trafficking. We are number 2 in the nation in opioid overdose deaths.
Terrible.
We pushed past New York to become the state with the second most laws, rules, and regulations. Doesn't sound like a less government conservative state. Before the pandemic, most credible economic sources ranked our economy at 35th. The numbers are in for the fourth quarter of 2021, and we are now ranked 47th. 47th out of 50.
Wow.
And when you consider what Ohio was, we were really the heart of it all. We were the envy of the nation, and we have certainly slid under Republican leadership. Combined, Ohioans pay more taxes per capita than 40 other states. Now, are we really trying to tax our way out of prosperity? And even though we have spent billions in economic development that the Ohio taxpayer is on the hook for, Ohio has 20,000 less businesses than it did in 1992. So, do we need some change? Yes. Do we need some reforms? Yes. What has contributed to these awful numbers? That's what we need to get to the bottom of and decide. In come the Promise Keepers. The fundamental changes, we have categorized these into different groups. So the fundamental changes, number 1, I would like to just read them. They want to elect a chairman of the board from the body of the state central committee, and then hire a professional CEO for the party that reports to the state central committee and the chairman of the board. So I think that is crucial, that the body elects their chairman.
Okay.
Number 2, the state central committee must approve all expenditures not provided in a budget approved by the state central committee. Emergency discretionary spending by the chairman is not to exceed $5,000 on a quarterly basis. Now, currently, that is not the situation. The chairman can give money where he wants. It allows special interests to have control, and of course, friends and pals of the establishment. Number 3, the State Central Committee must approve a quarterly budget for the chairman and the GOP management. Those are very important. Any board of a corporation would have those items in place. Now, the State Republican Convention, it's huge. Commitment to a Republican state convention like other states. And it's huge because it will swell our base and bring in the regular folks to our party platform, and it will reflect their needs and their wishes. Number 5, in years when there is no convention, the State Central Committee may make endorsements only in unopposed primaries. Currently, they have license to endorse candidates prior to the primary. If you remember this past time, they endorsed Governor DeWine before the primary, and he did not even really garner 50% of the votes when all came in the primary. A lot of people unhappy about that. Really, primaries decide who the people want to put up for their elected offices, and that must change, I believe. The State Central Committee must not endorse in contested primaries. Conventions may consider endorsements in a primary only if all contested primary candidates have had at least 3 debates with each other prior to the state convention and receive a 2/3 vote at the convention. So it's pretty tough to get an endorsement before a primary, as it should be. Goals. We have 2 goals: adopt a vision, goals, priorities, and a state-specific platform of policy solutions for Ohio. Now, everybody knows that if you don't have a plan, you plan to fail. So why would any corporation not have a plan or goals to achieve is beyond me. And of course, that plan and that platform would come out of a state convention. And number 8, adopt new bylaws that eliminate ambiguity and misinterpretation. We all know, that things can be interpreted in a lot of ways, and we want to eliminate that. Ethics is another category. Number 9, no party funds or services can be utilized to elect State Central Committee members. Currently now, all of the incumbents get a stipend to use for their reelection campaign, and that's really taking the control out of the grassroots for selection. And of course, it gives an incumbent an advantage over a grassroots candidate. So it's hard to get your way in when you're just a plain old grassroots person. Number 10, adopt a code of ethics for the party. Example, cannot be an appointee and be on the ORSCC at the same time. Number 11, adopt a whistleblower policy for the party. Number 12, the party's finances shall be professionally audited by a CPA firm every 2 years. Failure to do so will result in the termination of the chairman and CEO of the party. Right now, I don't think we have regular audits, and I think the audit team needs to be, who's doing the auditing needs to be selected by the entire body.
Understand.
And not just pals of the administration. And finally, engagement. Number 13, State Central Committee meetings only on Saturdays or Sundays, so the public can more easily participate and build a passion for the party. It's very important. You can't have a meeting on Wednesday afternoon at 3 o'clock and expect all of your public to be able to attend. So we want to make it as easy as possible for our voters, our residents, our grassroots to attend. That is common sense, Rudy. Okay. And number 14, all county and state central committee members must make available an email and phone number for constituent contact. Failure to do so will result in censure. And now I can't tell you how hard it is to find contact information for many of the committee members. And that's the 14 reforms. Not extreme, they're not over the edge, they're truly common sense.
Okay. The website for the Promise Keepers is going to appear on the bottom of the screen for people that want to look at the pledge. It's ohiopromisekeepers.com.
Yes, and there's a lot of other good information on that website. I would suggest everyone take a look at it.
Okay. What changes are needed to increase the integrity of the Ohio electoral process?
Well, for one, right now, we are dealing with fair and honest and truthful elections, and elections that can be easily audited. We know that President Trump has asked for paper ballots in all of the states. Why do we want paper ballots? Because you can hold it in your hand and you can count it. When votes go into machines, who knows what happens to them there? Sometimes there's a lot of monkey business, sometimes not. We also have to clean up our voter rolls. In the city of Vermilion alone, just at a very nominal glance, we picked up close to 100 voters that were over 90 years old and have passed away and voted in the last election.
Okay.
So it's one thing to have your name still in the voter roll, but it's another thing to figure out how did they vote. So
I can imagine.
yes, so that is very important. And then we have to stop supporting or endorsing candidates before primaries because it gives incumbents and party favorites an edge over our grassroots candidates.
What changes need to take place to accomplish the goals that you're talking about with the electoral process, cleaning it up?
Well, of course, a lot of citizens are getting involved now in checking with their Board of Elections, working on cleaning up the voter rolls. We know that nationally, we have an organization, I'm just forgetting his name, from My Pillow.
Right, I'm familiar with this.
The cyber
My
symposium.
Pillow.
Yeah, the cyber symposium that was held, and we have Dr. Frank and the professor, and we have some very, very highly skilled professionals
Okay.
that are working on our elections. And we know that the professor has an algorithm that he has put in place in every state, and every state has a number of fraudulent ballots. I think he isolated over 550,000 in Ohio. We had over 13,000 picked up in Lorain County. And
Wow.
but we have an administration that doesn't want to take a look at it. But we know we can influence our elective process at the county level. So that's what we are working on. We are working on that in our Vermilion Area Republican Organization for Erie and Lorain counties, and we have now pulled in several other counties that we are working with. And I think in the future we're going to have a foolproof, more electronic method of voting. People laugh, and they say they got a pretty rock-solid process in Las Vegas. There's no reason we can't have one in our counties.
Yeah.
So we definitely need to make sure that they are truthful and honest. And we have to hope that people aren't giving up yet on our elective process.
Okay, agree. Give us an example of a current vision statement for the Ohio Republican Party that you would support.
Well, very briefly, I mean, I could list
Yeah,
a
I
lot
know.
of things, but a vision statement is a vision.
Yeah.
And I'd say, using our own common sense, let's make Ohio the heart of it all again.
Okay. Good goal. What kinds of major corruption are currently occurring in Ohio government, and what can be done to overcome these challenges?
Well, I don't know. You know, corruption is a legal term.
Okay.
So, you know, it could be unethical, you know, maybe things that bend one way in preference to another way. I wouldn't want to drill down and say corrupt.
Okay.
But I think the thing that needs to happen is people need to start getting involved at the local level, on our school boards, on our township trustees, on our city councils, in our mayor's offices, in our board of elections, in our county commissioners, on down the line. We need to elect solid, conservative, honest, accountable to the people representatives.
Okay. What and how are special interest groups able to pick candidates for statewide offices?
Well, you know, it's all about the money. You follow
Okay.
the money, money talks. So you get special interests that back candidates and apply their influence to the situation. And then you have local media, you have newspapers that often have a slant. And so that's, you know, that's how special interests elect their candidates.
Okay. I've run across this statement. How are committee members bribed? I don't know that. I don't know if I agree with that word, but I've seen that. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think it depends on the committee member.
Okay.
So what do you like? You know, do you like to wield some influence? Do you want to be important? Do you want to have a little power? Do you want to be recognized? Then those would be your weak areas. And special interests can use your weak points.
Okay.
You're very vulnerable.
Okay.
So if I'm somebody that doesn't want to sign this pledge, for example, because I don't want to lock myself into an agreement, that means I am open to what? A deal.
Yeah.
I
Right.
can negotiate. You can talk to me.
Okay.
And what does that do for me? That gives me a little power and influence, and there are a lot of people that like that. If you are there for the good of the people, then you're not worried about your own personal power and influence. But, you know, with the Central Committee, I don't know that if anybody would be getting paid for things. You know, I would never say that, but I do know there are people there that like to be there because they like the influence and the power that they have.
Understand. What outstanding things are planned in your future?
Outstanding things are planned in my future.
Right.
Well, you can't really plan to win an election.
Okay.
You know, you always run like you're several points behind.
Okay.
But I would like to. I'm a lot more invested in it now than I was when I first started because I can really sense the need. And so I would like to become the female representative at the State Republican Central Committee for the 13th District. I feel as though it's absolutely essential at this time. And then my husband has recently retired, and so I enjoy spending a little of my winter in a little warmer climate.
Agree.
I enjoy my home a lot, my friends and my family, and my pets. And also I'm working on the Vermilion Area Republican Club or organization. We just started that a year ago, and it's going well. So we're going to try to elect good, solid, conservative Republicans and do all that we can to help them. We have, I believe J.R. Majewski is going to be attending one of our meetings.
Okay.
That'll be very exciting. And to stay involved politically, to help mentor anybody that would like some help and assistance. And I'd really like to get the word out about how wonderful our political governmental setup is in Ohio. We have a perfect state. We have precincts, we have a central committee, we have an executive committee, and we have a state central committee. All of those are ways and routes for the grassroots people to participate in their state government. And I would like to do whatever I can to bring people to the table and understand how blessed we are to have such a wonderful form of government that we haven't used for a long time. So I would really like to work on that as well.
Okay. I'm grateful that people of your caliber and understanding are running for office, and I can just think that the future will be bright if you and more people like you run for office and become our representatives.
And draw in our young people. They have got to have a place, and they have got to have a purpose, and they have got to feel like they belong. So, and I think a state convention would help with that a lot.
Okay. Well, what can Avon Lakers do to help your campaign? Do you need volunteers? Is there anything that Avon Lakers could do to help you?
I don't think so. I'm not really doing a lot of door-to-door. I don't have a lot of campaign literature. I have a very small business card that houses everything that's important. It has a statement or two about how important it is that we have the right representatives at the State Central Committee. Mm-hmm. I have my email address on there, and I have the website for the Promise Keepers on there, and I hand that out every opportunity I have. And there are also people at the state level that are working on campaigning as far as sending out emails and making phone calls on my behalf.
Okay. What's your email address for contacting you?
It is an old one. It has special meaning for me.
Okay.
It's jeansladybug@netscape.net.
Okay.
And please email me with any of your thoughts or questions. I love to hear from people.
Okay, great. And that'll be appearing on the bottom of the screen so that people can jot that down and contact you.
And then Avon Lake folks can go out on August 2nd. It's going to be one of the lowest turnouts we've ever known because it's a second primary, and a lot of people aren't even aware of it. So we can be aware of it, we can tell our neighbors, and get out and vote for that primary election. There's not many on the ballot. And then they can really do us a favor and check my box.
Okay, yeah.
Jean Anderson.
Okay, I believe the polls are even open today.
Yes.
So
yeah, they have started. Early voting has started, and I always joke, vote early and often. So.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for watching. If you have any comments or questions, certainly you could contact either of us. Our email addresses are appearing. If you would like to appear on the show, or you know an interesting person who would like to appear, please send us their contact information, and we'll see about making those arrangements. Thank you for watching. Remember, seatbelts save lives.
The preceding program was presented to you by a community producer. The statements, views, and opinions expressed were not necessarily those of ALC TV or the City of Avon Lake.